So lately I've been working with Talespire to build some battle maps for my campaign in Dungeons & Dragons, and while I think it's a great program, it doesn't really seem to have much detail in its tutorials, so I thought I would share some of the things that I've learned along the way. So here are 5 tips and tricks for tabletop battle map building in Talespire. We're going to start with the Elevate Object Modifier. You'll see with this stone when you just place it, it looks like that. But if you use the Control modifier, you can pull it into the ground a bit to turn a big rock into a small one. Or the Control modifier doesn't just let you adjust the height of it, it'll let you push those objects in together. So you can use it to smash a bunch of these stones together, and if you twist them, you won't even be able to tell that you've used the same object over and over again. It's an effect that I used here when I was making this rocky cave. So I just held Control and I was able to smash that rock together, twisting it every single time to make this effect. Stacking objects is obviously better for more than just rocks. You'll see with this tree here. When you place these objects, it doesn't let you put them next to each other. But if you hold Control, you can make a sort of more crowded set of tree growth, make it like a little impassable, heavily forested area, or difficult terrain. Then using one of these, you can actually put tree tops on top of these stumps. The way I like to do that is dragging it underneath. I try to center it, and then I use Control to bring it back up through the stump. Once it's up, you can sort of reposition it. If it has to go down, you can use Control to drag it again. With the pine trees here, it's a little bit easier. You can use the point of the pine tree to pull it up through the stump. And once it's up, you can stack these pine trees on top of each other to create varying heights in your forest. So you could have trees of all different heights. If you want to play with these bone objects, I think these look pretty lame on their own. They're pretty flat. They have they look too organized. You know, it's on a base. But if you use the Control tool, you can drag them underground, make it look like they're a little bit buried in the dirt or the grass or the jungle. And with these bigger ones, you can actually mix and match different pieces, burying them underneath to give the appearance of sort of more scattered bones, which I think is mostly the purpose with this sort of aesthetic. Going back to my rocky cave map, you can see how I've done that inside this cave for, you know, whatever monster we decide to put in there. The next tip is going to be for how to remove grid lines by meshing your terrain blocks. We're going to use that Control button again. A lot of the terrain blocks, especially this dirt thing, they kind of look a little wonky with that. So if you hold the Control button, you can drag your second terrain block over the first set along those lines. It'll place a new one with flat ground where the previous dip used to be, and it'll make it look a lot flatter and a lot more natural. The grid is still going to be there for when you're moving your pieces around. You're just not going to be able to see it that clearly. Going back to my sample map, you can see that when I go into build mode, there are a lot of these tiles that are sort of meshed on top of each other to eliminate those grid markings. But the orc guy is still going to move along the same grid. It's just not super obvious and looks a lot more natural for your players. It's also an effect I like to use if I'm making something that's underground in a dungeon. You put dirt along where the roof would be, and it gives it a more underground feel without that grid. Next up, I want to talk about forest floors and making them look a little bit more natural. What I'll do is there are a whole bunch of these plants. I'll take some of the ferns or some of the other plants that are there, and I will drop them into the ground. We're using that Control tool again, and I will pepper them everywhere. You just put 50 or 60 down, then rotate the piece, put 50 or 60 more, rotate the piece again, and keep going until you get the level of ground clutter that you want. This is another useful way to cover up those grid lines and make the ground look a little bit more natural if the terrain piece you're using doesn't look right with the previous method. You'll notice that when I switch to putting stuff on top here, that the object that you drop on top snaps to the terrain block, not the objects you've already dropped. So it looks like it's growing out of the same ground as the grass you've planted. To show you what that looks like, we'll go to the little forest example map that I made here. If I zoom in, you can see I used those ferns on this one, snapped them around, rotated to make a pretty lush forest floor. I used all the different plants and bushes and stuff like that to build up some smaller hills and stuff here. The next point I want to make is that everything can be anything. if there's an effect that you're looking to create and you can't find a specific object for it, just play around with other objects. Don't feel pigeonholed into using things for what they look like or what their supposed purpose is. On my sample map here, I've wedged trees into stone to look like moss on the outside. I use crystals as light sources. I use mushrooms and different trees to give orange effects. Anything that you need can be found. So you can use bushes to create hills, or the desert terrain to create roads, or the cave rocks to make cool rock formations out in the outside. The final tip that I have is for you to get mods. Get every single mod. Get all the mods you can get your grubby little fingers on and mod the hell out of Talespire. It's still early access, but these mods just make it so much better. I'll put a link in the description where you can find them and where you can get Mod Manager to help you sort, organize, and keep them updated. You're not just going to get all these really cool minis. The mods also have like custom terrain tools, weather effects, different things that are going to let you put import heroes from Hero Forge and stuff like that. So I encourage you to try every mod you can. Just get all of them, take a look at all the minis and stuff that you can find, play with the weather effects, and see what works for you. So if this video somehow popped up on your YouTube suggested or something like that, thanks for hanging out. If there's anything I missed, if you have any cool ideas, let me know. I mean, I only just started using Talespire and figuring most of this stuff out on my own, and, you know, always looking for new ideas. Thanks again, and we'll see you later.